want to use whatever knowledge I have. I want to use whatever I can use that I have been given to make their project grow. So that's what I get to do.
Well, it sounds like inspiration, like you're drawn to these movies that inspire and characters that inspire, and so all of a sudden those come to life when people walk through your door, that you're seeing the story that is inspiring to you, right? And then you're helping it get into the world and inspire others. And at the same time, you are inspiring them to on a path to ultimately figure out, how do I bring this to the world? Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I think I used to imagine inspiration coming from a motivational speech, right? You know?
Yeah.
But oftentimes, and I think this happened in Good Will Hunting, there is fears within every single person that all they need is a person to identify them and to share with them and to encourage them to get past that fear.
Wow, that's strong. Yeah.
And that's...
Do you feel like that's what the core of what you do?
It happens every day.
Oh, really?
Like, what are you scared of? Yeah. And how can I help encourage it? Now, and what I've noticed is that the fears never go away, but the courage becomes ripple effects. So like if you choose to overcome a fear and you make a choice of courage, what's crazy is these people start to surround you that want to be a part of that courageous story. They things you didn't prepare start to happen. I remember when I started Plywood, I left this previous couple roles that I had. One was an event called Q, another event was called Catalyst. People thought it was crazy. Like, why would you lead these huge platforms to go do this? What are you doing? Kind of thing, right? Everyone was kind of like, what are you doing?
Right.
But I knew that there was more to come. I was scared. I was scared about money. I was scared about failing, right? Being a part of two very successful things. Like, what if it fails, you know? And then we just did this fundraising lunch I was telling you about a second ago. We did a fundraising lunch. There's about 40 people there. And I looked around the room. So I left those jobs 4.5 years ago and was with them just a month and a half ago. I looked around the room. When I left those roles, I only knew 3 people that were in the room.
Wow.
Now, 4.5 years later.
Right.
So sometimes the courage, the ripple effects happen when like there's other people being prepared to join you in your journey you don't even know exist. You didn't even know their names. Well, you know, and these are like people that give us money. Like they don't know they didn't know me 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And they believe in me today. And their hearts were being prepared. Their like minds, their knowledge, even their money was being prepared to support this crazy idea that I had.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. That's really strong. So tell me, which character then in your top 10 do you kind of identify with most?
That's a good question. There's the ambition of I want to identify with Steve Jobs and the success that happened with that.
Go ahead and claim it, man. Go ahead and claim it, you know? There's no reason not to. We have that happen a lot where people see a figure like a gladiator or something like that and say, well, that's who I hope I am, you know? And I'm like, no, there's something about the fact that God moved you to put that on your top 10 that means that there is something he has in you that is that, you know?
It's funny. There's these little pieces of each. The dad in Little Miss Sunshine, I always connect to that,
really?
which is funny because I'll never forget the
Greg
scene.
Kinnear's
Yeah,
role.
yeah. The scene when he's giving his motivational speech, and there's only one or 3 people in the room,
right? And
he has his like pyramid scheme or whatever it was,
right?
I always joke about that. I think about that one because I grew up. I've known John Maxwell since I was 2 years old. I've been around motivational speakers literally my entire life.
Wow!
And so I've seen like the best of that, and the worst of the worst, and so that scene always makes me laugh.
Yeah.
I think I love the ambition of the people in Cool Runnings, because it's an unlikely person.
Yeah.
That changed everyone's perceptions. You know, like it's an unlikely team.
Yeah.
That changed everyone's perceptions of what was success. Right.
Yeah.
I love that perspective of of their lives.
Yeah, it does seem like there's an element in your movies of really rooting for these people. I won't say that are coming from humble beginnings, but sort of are coming from kind of disconnected beginnings to where they end up, if that makes sense. Jamaicans and bobsledding,
Yeah.
You've got Hoosiers with these guys who are, you just don't expect these guys to actually be the guys, right? So there's a sense, and of course, Little Miss Sunshine, she's the most unexpected. I mean, she's not going to win, it just doesn't seem like she's
that whole contest,
right? Exactly, and so there's a sense in which, and even Will in Good Will Hunting, he's a janitor, right? And he's this blue collar guy. So there just seems to be this sense in which you really resonate with these folks who are not really, the people that they become at the beginning in their beginnings.
I think the lead character, Don Cheadle in Hotel Rwanda, I think there's something that I connect with about that. I think the tension that he always wrestled with, it seemed like in the movie, was being this business leader, and then on one hand and the other hand being a great a compassionate person for the people that were in great need. I think I sit in some of those unique roles. So that was one that always really connected with me. I remember
that's good.
The first time I went to the King Center here in Atlanta, I remember reading this story about Dr. King saying that every day he'd wake up and he would go out his front door and he'd see the poorest of the poor in Atlanta, and then he'd have meetings with the most influential of the city. And his role was to bridge that gap. And I think, Don Cheadle in that movie played that role in a unique way.
Right.
And that's always been, I think, a unique role that I've hopefully played in the city also. So anyway,
and that really speaks to the when I look at your top 10 as a whole, I see both of those things playing out. So you've got movies like Crash and Hotel Rwanda and excuse me, and Once, and movies that are very relationally centric and very bridging race and bridging a lot of social, economic kind of things. So you see a heart in them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's multiple of these films kind of wrestle with the racial tensions and that really, for my family, I'm married, have 2 kids, 6-year-old, 4-year-old, and our daughter, who's 6, was adopted. She's African American, and so I think that's played a big role in this. I grew up in an inner city school. My high school, there's about 2,000 people at it, but there's 600 that were white Caucasian Americans, 600 African Americans, 600 with a Latino and or a Latin perspective in some way. Most were from Mexico, and then there's about a couple hundred that were from different refugee populations. And so I've always grown up in this very diverse community. It's been part of who I've been since I was born, and now, after I've adopted an African-American child, Jade is amazing, and, we go to Target, and we're impacted and get looks from the first day that it happened, of people asking, is that your child? Anyway, there's a lot of tensions in the midst of that, and now my daughter has to answer a lot of those questions from school, people at school, other kids. How can that be your dad? He doesn't look like you, or whatever. And I think so. We on a daily, literally a daily basis, we feel this tension, even though there's made a lot of progress that's happened in American society. There's a long way to go,
right?
And so I think I'm drawn to these storylines of the potential of hope in that tension of our times.
Yeah. There's a movie that's kind of a little bit of, I wouldn't say it's an odd man out, but I want to understand Once in relationship to some of the things we've been talking about. Where do you place it? If I said, okay, you got to make sense out of Once, Steve Jobs, and Crash, how do those 3 movies work together in your mind?
Yeah, I think So great question. I knew you were going to say that because you were like unpacking all these other ones. So Once takes this artist, right, and plays it out. And plays it out with the one relationship that was very intense, right? But it was still an art. And the reason why I love that movie is I believe every time I watch it, it makes me want to create better.
Huh. Okay.
That's that same.
So inspiration again.
It's inspiration, but it challenges me, like, to kind of go, if I was to do what I'm doing better, what would that look like? More creatively, with more, like, I mean, the thing
that's
that's
the same vibe you get when you watch the Steve Jobs movie.
Yes, definitely,
So
very
it's the
similar.
Same kind of concept of, wow, how can I be better at whatever I'm doing?
Very similar.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the innovation, the hard work at it, I mean, I'm a creative individual. I'm not just the coach thing that you were kind of saying earlier. Like, I come from a creative
So
background.
you are Will as well as you are
Yeah.
the Robin Williams character.
Yeah,
you're on that side of being the coach for him, the mentor.
Yeah, I
And
was
yet
always.
you are gifted.
Yep,
in
I
your
creatively have led teams. I've crafted experiences. I used to be when I came out of college, I was at a creative agency. I've started entrepreneurial projects. Those things all resonate with the Once mentality, the hard worker that he is, and the Steve Jobs. I mean, with Jobs film, I love the scene, those first scenes when they're in the house and in the garage, like the grittiness of that. Like Plywood people started in the front room of my house with, at that time, my assistant Giselle. Like, it was literally, we were in a square bedroom that was probably 12 feet by 12 feet. My assistant had a desk. I had a chair, like
funny.
just
Yeah.
and we had these big dreams how we're going to impact the city of Atlanta with the work that we do,
Yeah.
I love that scene in the garage, and trying to make something from nothing, trying to convince someone that this dream you have, that you can actually do it. I remember that in Jobs when he got that first order, and he had never done it. They created one of these products, and he got this pre-order, and it was just like, that mentality, that entrepreneurial spirit is something I connect with.
Yeah. Tell me about Happily Ever After. First of all, I want to go to your work and say, what does Plywood people look like in the future, and what is it that you see as the vision of what you're trying to do? Like, what does that happily ever after look like for the work you're doing right now? And then, which movie in your top 10 would be that happily ever after that you see? Like, which one has the best happily ever after in your mind?
So the story of Plywood in Atlanta would be, I think Atlanta has always struggled finding an identity.
Yeah, true.
And yeah, I think there's two very identifiable things that people don't resonate together. The first, Atlanta is known for being the home of Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola is the biggest brand in the world. It's in more countries than the United Nations. Their whole dream is to be within, I'm going to get this wrong, but within a reach of a Coca-Cola whenever they need it, basically. And so globalization was defined by this city and the brand that exists here, for better, for worse, whatever you think about it.
Yeah.
For healthy, for unhealthy, whatever, right? But Coca-Cola is a huge part of it. So our city is known for innovation, globalization. We're the host of the biggest airport, all those types of things. And then the other side is we're the home of Dr. Martin Luther King, the person that changed civil rights forever and human rights forever. And so I believe our city ought to be known for both of those things collectively. And somewhere in the middle of that is where we as an organization want to sit. We want to be coming up with creative, new, innovative products and projects that affect real people, whether that's locally, whether that's neighborhood-based, or whether that affects everyone in the entire world. And I think we've been able to be a part of a lot of projects like that. So that's kind of the framework of kind of what it could look like. The future, I would love to have a district in Atlanta that's all rooted in projects that look like that. Projects that are social entrepreneurial in nature. So imagine a New York Times a New York Times journalist coming here someday and saying, show me what's happening. And I could take them through a little bit of a neighborhood and show them about 40